Welcome to Origin, Remember Your Truth, a podcast for everyone who senses there's more than meets the eye. I'm your host, Anna Hochwald, and I'm really excited that you're here. Together, we explore what lies beneath conditioning, roles, and learned identities through energy, intuition, and lived experience. This is your invitation to remember your inner truth and to feel what's true for you. Take what resonates, throw out the rest. On today's episode, I'll be introducing ways to make decisions so you can save yourself some time and struggle. So why do we struggle with decisions? I mean, we make so many decisions every day, tens of thousands of decisions that we're not even consciously aware of. And the ones that we're not consciously aware of, like, do I move around the corner in that specific way or the other way? Those are not the decisions I'm going to be talking about now, and those are also not the ones occupying our brain capacity, let's put it that way. But when we make bigger decisions, so not what we'll have for lunch, but maybe do I want to invest my money into that course or that thing I want to buy? Or how do you proceed in a relationship? All kinds of things, so many decisions to make, and we might be hesitating because we don't want to make the wrong decision. And I already want to stop you there before we go into how you can take a decision. Because in my opinion, there is no wrong decision. Because once a decision is made, you will never be able to know what the other option would have been, because that moment in time has passed. So you can't say, oh, I went for that job training, but the other training might have been better. You cannot know, because basically as soon as you took that decision, you changed time and the circumstances. To afterwards then say this was the wrong decision is not possible, because you have no way to compare it or no basis to compare it with, because you are different, things have changed. And as we cannot currently in these bodies travel back in time, and then that again is a discussion for itself, time not being linear, parallel timelines and all that, but let's keep it more straightforward for this 3D life. If you chose to eat that chocolate bar or go for that job training or whatever, you cannot compare it. So you cannot make a wrong decision. And this making the right decision, though, is also the same thing. You also can't make the right decision, because it's again the same problem or reasoning, because again you cannot compare. But what you can do instead of making the right decision is making the decision right. So whatever you did decide to do or will decide to do, to go with that, you've committed. That doesn't mean that you can't pivot at some point if something proves really to not be the most unchallenging way forward. Though challenges are necessary to grow, but sometimes you can also admit, okay, I learned a lot from this, but that does not mean I have to see it through to the end. But yeah, with making the decision right is to go with whatever you chose and to see the positive in that, because the decision is made. You have to live with it either way, so you might as well make it suck less if you feel like it sucks. Because if you feel like it sucks and you think it sucks, it will suck. You'll always win that game at finding the negatives. So try to find the positives if you can. And it's not easy. It's easier said than done. But I think it's kind of training as well to get there, to know how to do that. So now that we know there are no right or wrong decisions, it's just pathways, basically. And some you learn more, and others you learn less. There are so many ways to make decisions, and everyone has their own technique. Maybe people don't have their own technique, and they just do something. They don't they're not consciously aware of what they're doing, or they try to avoid decisions altogether, let other people make the decisions for them. If this is you or this triggers you, I invite you to feel into that and maybe see why you're avoiding decisions, what might be the underlying factor there. So, yeah, to make a decision, some people, really classical example that I learned, I think as a kid from my dad, was to make a list with pros and cons and then potentially even value certain arguments. If something felt more important, give more points to that and then calculate, okay, which decision am I going to take? Thing is, if you come up with a lot of arguments and so many potential downfalls or positive consequences, those lists can get long, long, long. And as our time, without wanting to be fatalistic, but here in this human experience is kind of limited, we don't want to take too long for every small decision. Also, you're not going to do a huge pro and contra list for what you're going to have for lunch. And those are also not the decisions I'm talking about. Now, if you listen to previous episodes, it's episode 6, I think, where I was talking about human design. And in human design, you have an authority, and that authority basically dictates, well, dictates is a bit of a harsh word, but gives you a sense of how you react to life and how you can make decisions. For example, I have a sacral authority, so I really, when a decision is presented, I really get this gut feeling, yes or no. That is very handy, especially now as an entrepreneur. You cannot think through every decision for 10 days, and it's helpful to have this yes or no. Also for personal decisions. But you might not have a sacral authority. You might have an emotional authority. And for that, then you go through waves of emotions. And I would highly recommend you don't take larger decisions on the same day, but sleep over it for more than a day, 3, 4 days, depending on you. I also don't want to generalize human design here because I do believe you can, let's not say train your intuition, because I think we all have intuition. It's more of allowing your intuition come through, and maybe also a matter of practicing it. And there, even if you have an emotional authority, I personally think you can still develop a kind of instinct in certain areas and don't always have to be limited to waiting for several days until the emotions ebb off. But that's my personal opinion. A human design expert might disagree with me. And there are more authorities, 7, 8 authorities, something like that. And mental authority would need a lot of arguments, as the making lists that I've mentioned earlier. But I invite you there you can do this with your birth date, time, and place. There are several sites where you can just for free, without giving out your email, check your human design type and authority, and there you can see how you react to life and make decisions if this is something you're interested in. Now, even if you do know your human design and use it, with me with the sacral authority, that means I quickly have a yes or no. But just because I know, yes, I want to do this, does not mean that my nervous system is ready for it or will come along straight away. And it might be that I have to let it catch up to agree with maybe the consequences that this decision might have for me. Like putting myself out there in, I don't know, starting a podcast, for example, that I know, yes, this is the right decision. But on the inside, my nervous system is panicking and saying, oh my God, what will people say? They will hear me. I'll be out there. It's not safe. That's totally fine. Your nervous system is there to protect you. That's what it was or evolved to do, to protect us, which is how we survived. Now, most days we're not living in a cave and have to worry about the tiger coming at night or whatever comes at night or whenever something comes. I don't know, I don't live in a cave. The survival patterns that are still ingrained in our DNA are not always necessary. Though it's good that we have them. So sometimes, even if you quickly have an answer to a decision, it might be that you still need to let your nervous system, your body catch up to what that will mean, and to, if you can, communicate with your nervous system in a visualization, or if you meditation really to trying to talk to your nervous system. Imagine it as a person or object or whatever comes to you, what it looks like, and to ask it, okay, we've made our decision, but you still need time to adapt to this. What would you need to be on the same boat, so to speak? That's one way to do it. And now for some methods you can use to make a decision. So one technique from kinesiology, natural practitioners is the word. They use this test, and basically it's our body reacting to energy and seeing where there might be blocks, in a way that if you imagine a certain setting or decision, or let's take food for instance, you can check with this test if a certain type of food, let's say sugar, agrees with your body. And there are several ways to do this. You could, or you lift your arm away from your body, like in a 90-degree angle to your body, and then you have someone push down your arm. You do provide resistance, and you see, okay, how much resistance did I provide, and how hard was it for the other person to push down your arm? Then maybe you put a tablespoon of sugar in your mouth, or whole sugar, or just imagine sugar and what that is like for your body. Then you do the same test again, and most likely your arm will just very easily be pushed down by that other person. You can do the same thing in a pendulum matter. So your body is the pendulum for a yes or a no. Say you ask yourself a question and the options are yes or no. And for that, first you need to figure out what your yes and your no is. So if you stand, close your eyes, and really imagine the word, yes, I want this, I'm going to do this. Doesn't matter what we're even talking about, but just to know my body is all in for it. And then to see, does my body move to the front or to the back? So you know what your baseline yes is. Maybe it's the back, maybe it's the front. And the same for no, should be the other direction then. And then knowing what your yes and no is, you imagine the option that you have to make your decision, and then see, does your human pendulum move towards yes or towards no? So this is something you can use if you want a quick yes or no answer, where you really feel, or you let your body feel into what it wants, what it needs. Say the decision, should I move away from my apartment? You can check that out there, and then you'll see what your body wants. That does not mean that you're fine or your nervous system is fine with the consequences of that, but you know what your body feels deep down, because energy doesn't lie, and energy will provide an answer here. Now, another way you can figure out how to make a decision is to talk to your future self. Because the thing is, when we make decisions, usually we base our decisions on the past, on experiences, and basically feedback that we've gotten from previous decisions. But somehow that also means we can't really evolve, because we always base our future on our past. Now, don't get me wrong. In human design, one of my profile lines is trial and error, so I thrive on experience, and I need to learn from experience. Yet, for future decisions, that can be somewhat of a hindrance, as I will only be able to incorporate my old self and what that self has learned. So to circumnavigate this, I can talk to my future self. So right now, I really invite you, or do it at a later time, to visualize yourself in a space. Could be a living room or somewhere outside. I don't know where you see yourself in the future. Maybe you don't have a living room. Maybe you live in a camper van, whatever. Visualize yourself there together with your future self. And your future self might be 40, 60, 80 years old. Doesn't matter. Pick or let the age come to you. You'll see if you really breathe into it who's going to come up. Maybe it's the granny or grandpa or just a couple years older than you are now. Be curious what comes up. And then wherever you are with your future self, let your future self talk to you. Because often, especially when it's about, oh, do I invest this X amount of money into doing that? And yeah, of course, it would be good for the future, but right now, I want to save the money so then later I have more. Yes, but you might be learning from this. So that's where your future self will come in, because your future self is most likely wiser than you are, and your future self will have different priorities. And know that maybe working those extra hours with no appreciation from anyone and you not even really caring about getting that promotion in comparison to spending more time with your family, your friends, or doing a training to learn some new skill that will really help you in the future. That is something where you can consult your future self, and your future self will help you and will be encouraging and guide you if you let it. It might also give you words of wisdom in a way that, well, you can do that, but you're going to fall on your face. Because, as I said, most likely your future self is wiser or has, well, not or, and because of that, or because of past experiences, I don't want to call them mistakes, has learned a lot. So listen to your future self. It has your best interest at heart. And for this, you can take a quiet moment to sit down and really visualize it. You don't have to sit down, of course, but whatever way works for you. So this is another way to make a decision. If you really feel like, I don't know what to do, I can't ask my friends, I don't really want to make the decision by myself, well, then don't. Or actually you are, but also not. But you're going to be empowered through this because you are making the decision by yourself, for yourself, in a good way. Now, another way you can make a decision is to, instead of thinking, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah, it's nice to be prepared, and I get that. I also sometimes do that, just to know that if I'm maybe wary of a certain decision or scared even, then I might go for it. Okay, but what even is the worst case scenario? Is it even that bad? Instead of doing this, how about we do it the other way around? What's the best possible outcome? What if the best possible thing happened? And if you have several options, maybe you have some business endeavor that you want to try out. You have different options. You're not sure. So let's imagine that all of the options will work. They're going to work for sure. If they worked for sure, or let's say money didn't matter, if the price of something is currently not something you want to or feel like you can invest, then what if money didn't matter? What would you choose then? What if you had 1 year to live and no more? What would you choose then? Most likely you will have, I hope so, more than 1 year to live. But just to give you some perspective, if that were the case, if you lived your life for yourself, for now, because you don't know what's going to happen, and if you put it off for 30 years or longer or never do it, this life will be over. And even if you believe in reincarnating, this exact life and timeline, you're not in that. So make the best out of this, is my personal advice. Not saying that I do that all the times, but I try to. It's a process. We're human. or whatever that is. Still, sometimes the reminder can help. And it's not about being perfect at all, but to make it less hard. So yeah, if you think of all those things, if money didn't matter, you have 1 year to live, then what is your decision? Sometimes this perspective can help. I mean, I'm not for, compare yourself to people that are very, very bad off or very sick, because then, well, if we do that all the time, then yes, of course, we'd have no reason to complain about anything, and we should be happy with everything we have already. We're still human. We still have desires and we want to grow. So compare yourself with yourself if you have to, not with others. I hope this example is somewhat, that you can grasp it. Now, another way to make a decision that can be very quick. And actually, I like this one. Flip a coin. There are two ways to do this. Either you really literally just flip the coin. You say, okay, heads is option A, tails is option B. If you have more than two options, then roll the dice, whatever. Be creative there, or go through the options in several steps, whatever. So you flip the coin, and then you see, oh, it's A. Now I don't have to make the decision anymore. And you will feel immediately, are you happy about heads? Or would you have wished for tails? And the second option is to just do this hypothetically. As soon as someone would flip the coin and it has not yet fallen onto the floor, what are you hoping for? Heads, tails, heads, tails? Because that will come to you. And that is most likely what your body wants, what you intuitively want to do or try, without the constraints of society, money, all the stuff you're telling yourself. Because that's what distorts making that decision. And our day only has 24 hours. And also, if you take days and weeks for one decision, that decision might already be outdated because facts have changed, circumstances have changed. Okay, usually facts don't change, but the circumstances. And it will hinder you in growing and moving, because in between you could have already taken 10 or 20 new decisions. Or I'll say course corrected, because maybe one of those decisions wasn't ideal. Now, it wasn't the wrong decision. All the decisions are fine. That's why I personally try to make decisions as quickly as possible, because then you have more time to course correct and to take a bunch of other new decisions that will even only then come up because you took that first decision. New opportunities that will only come up if you move. And if you take longer for everything, then some opportunities will never arise, or you won't be able to see them because you're still caught up in something else, or not ready, let's put it that way, or in a different state of mind, but you're somewhere else in life. So I think taking quick decisions can be very beneficial. And in all this, trusting whatever your intuition is, like knowing, gut feeling, and maybe you do literally just flip coins for decisions. I mean, if that's your thing, then cool. One more thing that's coming to me now. If you have, well, I believe you all have guides, but if you are in contact with your guides, ask them. Depending on what they're like, you might get very helpful feedback. I mean, some guides aren't that talkative. And what I've heard is the more sophisticated, developed they are, the less they talk. Regarding that, my number one guide is apparently very developed, because usually it's more of the yes-no thing or short words. But I ask her a lot of things, and the answers I get from my guide are not necessarily the answers or decisions that I would have taken from my gut feeling, or rational reasoning is something I don't use that much anymore, only as basically to check afterwards, after I've already made the decision in my head, and just to check to be on the safe side. But whatever my guide has told me so far regarding decisions, it was always accurate. I mean, Usually it's a yes or no. And in the beginning, when I was still in, the beginning of our communication, I also sometimes got the something in between yes and no for certain paths. Let's call it that. And that was well, yeah, you could do it. So it wasn't an absolute no, but it felt like you can do it. It's an unnecessary learning experience. You'll fall on your face, but sure, go ahead. I, of course, had to, with my human design trial and error profile, had to try that out. I did fall on my face every time. And now somehow my guide has adjusted the feedback she gives me. She only gives me a yes or no because she knows if she gives me a maybe, I will go for that maybe. And I'm working on that. As I said, we're all works in progress. But yeah, that's just a short story from my side. So I hope this helps you. And there is not one solution for everyone. There's also not one solution for every decision. You might have or use a different solution for different decisions, and maybe none of these things resonate with you. That's also totally fine. You do your thing. Maybe there is something you think, oh, that's piquing my curiosity. I'm going to try that out. We have enough decisions to make every day, so I believe there's sufficient room for practicing. So with that, now we really have quite a few options, going from the old traditional way, making a list, following your human design authority, doing the kinesiologic test, talking to your future self, or just ignoring constraints of what would others think. What if money didn't matter? What if you only had 1 year to live? To change perspective, you can flip a coin, either with a coin or hypothetically. And on all of this, I just invite you to trust your gut intuitive instinct, however it comes along for you. So I hope this helped. And if you have any questions and want to know more about certain topics, or you feel called to working with me, let me know. My contact data is in the show notes, as always. If this episode resonated with you, follow, rate, leave a review, or share it with someone who might benefit from it. That would mean the world to me and help the podcast reach more people. I hope this touched you in some way, sparked a thought, or ideally a feeling. May you move through your day with curiosity, awareness, and a little more of your own truth shining through. Happy decision making, and see you in the next episode.